What's going on, my dudes? This is Math Time with Mr. G, and this is our final review, last video. So the whole point of this video is to impress yourself with how much you've learned, but also to maybe help you say, I don't remember that one particular topic, and to help you study. So in topic 1, we convert fractions into decimals, and we do that by dividing the top by the bottom, converting mixed numbers into decimals. So that's like 2 1/4. This is the same as 2.25. Adding and subtracting when negatives are involved and making it into positives perhaps. Multiplying and dividing with negatives. And if there are 2 negatives present, turning it into a positive. And then dividing by a fraction. So let's say I have 10 over 5 over 4. That's the same as 10 over 1, change it to multiplication, and then flip. And then deposit means I'm putting money into my bank account. Withdraw means I'm taking money out. Topic 2, we talked about our exponents. Anything to the 0 power is 1. Power to a power meant multiply. Negative exponents weren't allowed. So we would swap them to the other side of the fraction to make them positive. Multiplying when we're talking about exponents really just meant add the exponents. When we had fractions, that meant subtract. And if they didn't give us an exponent, that meant 1. And then writing a decimal as a fraction, you just counted how many spaces there were. So 1, 2, 3, and that's how many zeros there were. And then reduce your fraction. And then scientific notation was when we had 2 times x to the positive 2. That meant move our decimal places 2 spaces, or 200. Or, if it was negative, that meant move it to the left 2 spaces, or 0.02. Combining like terms, they had to be exactly the same for us to combine them, or they had to have the exact same exponent to combine them. One-step equations, we created the line and then we subtracted. And two-step was when we had our line, we subtracted, showed our canceling, and we got our answer. And then when there was fractions, x plus 1 all over 2 is equal to 4. We multiply both sides to get rid of the fraction, and then we could solve. Multi-step, that was when we had maybe a number outside that we needed to distribute before we could solve on the other side. And then we could subtract. Variables on both sides. It's where we had to move the variable to one side to the other to combine variables with variables. And then subtract constants to be with constants. And then we could divide. And then 2 negatives made a positive. And then with inequalities, we subtracted from both sides and then made a number line. One bigger, one smaller, closed dot because it's or equal to, and then a less than. And then if there was a negative number in front and we divided by a negative, our sign flipped. Graphing. This, we read it backwards, so this said to go up 2. That's our first dot. Then this told us to go up 1 over 3. And then there was our line. Zero slope was straight across, and that was a y equals number. And then a line straight up and down was an x equals number. Then our slope equation was y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then from a table, we could say this was y2, y1, x2, x1, and then find the equation from there. Complementary was a 90-degree angle. Supplementary was 180, and vertical meant that they were equal to each other. Triangles, they gave us 2 sides, and we had to find the missing side, and that added up to 180 degrees. Our area equation, our circumference equation, all the different shape names, all the different types of triangles. Surface area is when we had a box and we found the area of one side, area of another, 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 and then added them all up. Volume was some kind of form of length times width times height. Pythagorean's theorem was a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and that only worked for a right triangle. When we had a 3-dimensional space, we found the fishing rod that went all the way across, and then our distance formula for 2 points in space was x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. In our last chapter, we learned about population versus a sample. This is everyone. This is just part of everyone. Random meant there was no rules to us picking people. It's just point and shoot. That guy is going to be someone I interview. Versus representative, we were strategic on who we randomly chose. Mean, we added up everything and then divided by the number of people. Median was we took out the highest, took out the lowest until we found the actual middle. Box and whiskers with our min, max, median, Q1, and Q3. MAD was to see how normal our data was. So we found the mean of all of our data. And then we subtracted in such a way that our answer was always positive. Added up and then divided by our data again. And that let us know how, quote, normal our data was. Simple probability was what we want versus what's possible. Compound was what we want over possible, and then what we want over possible again, and then we multiplied, subtracting what was taken out before. Well, that was an entire school year. So remember to be kind to one another, ask lots of questions, and think deeply.